during one of the Kiddishes when he was here last time. And I told him I was born in Hungary, in a small community called Halmin. And it's about 32 kilometers from the famous Satmar community, the Satmar Hasidim, the Satmar Arab, the Irish Teitelbons, the Chrono Europa. And I told him, I remember as a child, there was a Motzen family in my community. It was, I still remember, I don't remember, but I do remember. It was Abba Motzen, Gedalia Motzen, and Lipa Motzen. And they had a grocery store, they were in the grocery business. As a young kid who never had a little money, I was running to the Motzen store for candy. What I want to bring out here is, so I asked Cantor Motzen, are they related to you? Yeah, he told me, look, wherever there is a Motzen in the world, we are all cousins. That's what he told me. And also, he told me that his great-great-great-grandfather of the Halmina Ruf, Abun Chaim Motzen. So Rabbi Motzen, you count 6 generations of Rabbanim where I grew up. This is the way how the world goes. You had to meet Ner Tamid in Baltimore in America. I couldn't do it in Halmina. Isn't that something? Now that we find out that we come from such a rabbinical family, I'm sure you can ask for a raise. But you cannot do that. The contract is signed. Tonight, Rabbi Motzen will occupy one of the most prestigious pulpits in Baltimore, serving a striking example of a modern Orthodox synagogue. I remember when Ner Tamid set out to recruit a new spiritual leader. Our goal was to identify a young individual who not only is well versed in Torah and can settle questions of Jewish law and ritual as they apply to everyday life, but will also understand the role of the Orthodox Jew in contemporary American society. Those problems are diversified, and the solution requires a strong foundation in Jewish law, as well as the social sciences. Obviously, this foundation can be obtained through higher education, and we are happy that Rabbi Motzen is continuing his higher education. He is working on a graduate degree in counseling from Johns Hopkins University. Because the people who belong to Ner Tamid came from a variety of backgrounds in respect to religious training and observances with which they choose to seek the assistance of the rabbi. Those are not extreme or unusual problems that a rabbi of a modern Orthodox synagogue faces on a day-to-day basis. Aside from his outstanding professional credentials and skills, Rabbi Motzen is coming to us with a superb high education from 3 world yeshivos: Kerem B'Yavne, the Mirror Yeshiva, and of course the world-famous Ner Yisrael Yeshiva here in Motzen. I can tell you, Rabbi Motzen is a gentleman, he's a mensch. He makes a special effort to make everyone feel at home in our shul. That reminds me, on a Hasidic Rebbe, I have to tell you this story. He goes to New York, in front to Manhattan, in front of Macy's store, big store. He has a platter in his hand, he's asking people for money for his yeshiva. It's not unusual, it's normal. In the other corner, there is the Habdir, Catholic priest, also with a platter in his hand. He's also asking money for his Catholic institution. There comes a Hasidic Yid and watches who gets more money, that Rabbi or the Habdir, that priest. But you see, everybody's walking by the guy and nobody gives him almost nothing. But almost everybody puts money for the priest. And that bothered him. He has some Agmas Nefesh, I'm telling you, he almost collapsed. He approaches the Rebbe and he says, look, if you would be dressed like a mensch, like that priest, if you would be shaved like that priest, if you would behave like that priest, you would also get a lot of money. The Rebbe smiles and he calls the priest. He says, Moshe, Moshe, look who's teaching us the business. And Rabbi Motzen come here to us, my head. Is he going to be the one who's going to teach us the rabbinical business here in Shul? Yes, he is the one. I had the pleasure to work with Rabbi Motzen for at least 1.5 years. And I realized his extraordinary leadership for Ahavas Yisrael, love for the Jewish people, the state of Israel, the Baltimore Jewish community, and the synagogue. And I can tell you, when he gives us his sermon, those are the Urim Hayotzim min Halev, Echnusim al Halev. It comes from his heart and it goes into our hearts. He made sure that this synagogue becomes a Torah center in Baltimore. And he made sure that Torah and prayers are kept to the highest level. We have study groups every day, various classes for various groups, special for ladies, not mentioning that we have in our synagogue one of the best Jewish Montessori schools in the country. To Rabbi Motzen, I would like to say, welcome aboard. The challenges which lie ahead of you will not necessarily be easy to meet. However, the reason you were chosen for this office is because you have proven yourself in the past 1.5 years, and therefore you deserve our confidence for the future. I would like to extend a hearty mazel tov to you, Rabbi Motzen. We look forward to working in close association with you in the future. Mazel tov. This outstanding evening would not have been possible without the very hard work and planning of this evening by the donor committee. Yasher Koach to all of you. Now we're going to say one kapitel Tilim in honor of Rabbi Motzen's installation. I think I don't know if you have already the copies. Or everybody has a copy? We'll make sure I have one. No more? I'm going to say it loud. Please join me. Shiramalas Yisrael Mo, Im Adonai Elohim Leva Yishav Om Ribono Bo, Im Adonai Lo Yishmor Yeshav Shukat Shomed, Shav Luchem Ashkima Yikum Ma'ach Lesheves, Of Yelechem Ha'atzuvim, and Yitem Yidido Sheinu, In Enachlas Adonai Rabonim, Shocha Puri Habotem, Kechitzim Be'ad Gibor, Kein B'nei Hanorim, Ashrei HaGever HaShavila Yisashkusha Mehem, Now I'm going to ask President Barry List, the Vice President Dr. David Main, to walk up with Rabbi Motzen, to come up to the bima, and he's going to take his photo. Please, sir.
Distinguished rabbis, officers of the board, family, and friends. 6 months ago, I received a phone call that would dramatically change my life. It was a call from Dr. Suzanne Kielsen-Friedman informing me of the synagogue's decision. And the words that I thought of then, words that are still foremost in my mind, are the words of Moshe, our first and greatest leader, who upon hearing that he was chosen to be the leader of the Jewish people, said, Mi Anochi, who am I? How am I worthy of such an undertaking? How will I lead and guide your children? And yet, I find comfort and hope in God's response to Moshe. Ki ehyeh imach. I will be with you. I hope and I pray that God continue to be with me, to guide me and support me, to grant me the insight necessary to understand the needs of my congregation and the strength and resolve to obey His divine will. I would like to echo my wife's comments and thank you, the wonderful congregation of Ner Tamid, for your support, respect, and love, of which I am a daily recipient. But I would also like to thank those who have brought me to where I am today. My parents, who impressed upon me the words of Hillel, if I am only for myself, who am I? Through their actions, they taught me to dedicate my life to others, and they taught me how to live a life dedicated to God. And to both my parents and in-laws, for your unending love and support. My grandparents, who after all these years of us living in Canada, are accustomed to making a long trip to visit us. I know the trip is getting harder. Thank you for being with us today. To our siblings, for being both role models and friends. I would like to thank my high school principal, Rabbi Eliezer Breidowitz, who opened my eyes to the beauty and depth of the Torah. I look out into the crowd and I see so many members of Ner Israel Rabbinical College, to whom I owe an incredible debt of gratitude for educating me, for guiding me, and for the profound impact you have made and continue to make on my life. Last, but certainly not least, I must thank my wife. There's a story, and you know by now how much I love stories. It's a story of a mayor in a small town who was one day walking past a construction site with his wife. One of the construction workers calls out to the mayor's wife, and she turns to introduce her husband to the construction worker, and they speak for several minutes. After the mayor and his wife continue on, he turns to his wife to ask her how she knows that construction worker. She explains that she dated him years ago, and was even considering marrying him. "Aren't you lucky?" said the mayor. "If I hadn't come along, today you'd be the wife of a construction worker." To which the wife replied, "Not really. If I had married him, he would now be a mayor." Hinting, without your encouragement and undying support, I would not be standing here today. Mashali shalach. It is to you that I owe all my accomplishments. Tonight, I would like to share with you a vision that will guide me as your rabbi. It's a vision that I am confident I will not lose sight of, because its symbol hangs here right above my head. It's a symbol that dates back to the genesis of the Jewish nation 3,000 years ago in the wilderness. And it's the symbol that represents this congregation, the Ner Tamid, the eternal flame. The great 16th century philosopher, the Maharal of Prague, explains the significance and symbolism of the Ner Tamid by expounding on its three components. A ner, a light, is made up of oil, of a wick, and of a flame. The oil is where the flame draws its strength and fuel. That, he explains, symbolizes the past, the traditions and great history of the Jewish people. The wick represents the Jew, and the fire and flame represents spirituality. It represents the impassioned soul. I would like to elaborate on these three components and explain how they represent my vision for Ner Tamid. When I think of the oil of my vision, the history that I will draw upon, I think about a meeting that took place in Bernie and Bunny Rosenthal's living room 58 years ago, almost to the day, where a group of young men and women met to sign a charter for a new synagogue. A synagogue that was being built in an area that we would not recognize today. Jews were moving away from downtown to the Green Spring area, but there was no spiritual center to guide them. There was no place to pray, There was no place to study. The Green Spring area was sorely lacking in spiritual infrastructure. But those pioneering men and women, those trailblazers, built where no one had built before. Their cottage soon expanded into a sanctuary, which soon expanded to include a school. And before they knew it, Ner Tamid, led by their beloved Rabbi Leibowitz, was the heart and soul of the Green Spring area. The legacy of his legendary kindness and warmth is continued by his wife, Rebbetzin Ruth Leibowitz, who we are honored to have joining us tonight. Rabbi Leibowitz, Zichrono Livracha, was followed by Rabbi and Rebbetzin Landau, who we are also honored to have here, joining in the celebration. Under their leadership, Ner Tamid, already an established and respected center of Jewish life, became the incubator, if I may, of institutions that would shape this community. The Rambam School, yeshivas, seminaries, and of course, Eitz Chaim. Rabbi Landau brought excitement to Jewish adult education with his famous Omer lectures. He brought unity to the broader community with his Yom Yerushalayim celebrations. He conveyed a passionate love for the land of Israel that resonated deeply in the hearts of the congregation. So when I think of the oil that gives fuel to my vision of Ner Tamid, I think of these great people and the innovation they brought to build the synagogue, to strengthen Torah, to be leaders in kindness, and to support the land of Israel. And then I think back to the history, to the oil that they built their vision upon. I think about our collective history that goes back to a group of men, women, and children who stood at the foot of Mount Sinai. And when God invited them to take upon themselves a mission that would both change and define the course of history, they bravely said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. And it was not just the mitzvot that our ancestors accepted upon themselves that day, because it is those words, Na'aseh v'nishma, that call to action, that propelled us and drove us through history. Defeat after defeat, exile after exile, relocation after relocation. We were driven by a mission to act and to build. We will do, and then we will listen. It gave us the strength to conquer the land of Israel in the times of Joshua, the courage to rebuild the second temple. It gave us the resolve to adapt to every new country we found ourselves in. And it gave us the determination to build the state of Israel. We were and we are a people who do first and ask later. It is to this glorious history that I look back to inspire me to march forward. But it is the last component, the light, the fire, what the Maharal explained to be the soul and the spirit, that I would like to focus on tonight. Because it is the fiery and passionate soul that is most relevant to us in this day and age. For thousands of years, we have excelled at being a people of action. We have been on the run from the Lech Lecha of Abraham to the refuseniks of the USSR. For thousands of years, we have succeeded in rebuilding from destruction. From Ezra and Nehemiah, who rebuilt the second temple, to the founders of the state of Israel, and to those who rebuilt Torah centers around the world, Na'aseh v'nishma, act first and ask later, reverberates through our blood. And one need not look so far to appreciate this. Baltimore is not what it once was. The Green Spring area is no longer that spiritual wasteland of 1955. There's a synagogue on every street corner. There's a plethora of Jewish schools to choose from. We have the biggest kosher supermarket in the country. And every house in the area seems to have a mezuzah on its doorpost. We have perpetuated the legacy of our ancestors by being quick to rebuild and quick to act. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will act, and then we will listen. But I believe that it is time to focus on the second part of our age-old commitment. We have acted, and now it is time to listen. What I mean by listen is that it is time to bring meaning and depth to those actions. It's time to light that flame that Ner Tamid and allow our achievements and daily activity be illuminated by its light. It's time to ignite our